Canadian Work Permit. General frequent asked questions. A work permit is a legal document permitting a foreign national to engage in employment while inside of Canada. Each year, Canada issues about 500,000 work permits to temporary foreign workers around the world. Canada is a prime destination for many foreign nationals who are seeking employment opportunities. Working in Canada is also an excellent first step for those seeking to immigrate to the country permanently. Who is eligible to work in Canada? Most foreign nationals require a permit to be eligible to work in Canada, with some exemptions. To apply for a work permit, most candidates will require a Canadian job offer supported by a Labour Market Impact Assessment, LMIA. There are some exceptions to this requirement, where foreign workers can apply for a work permit without an LMIA or a job offer. Examples of this include a recent graduate from a Canadian Designated Learning Institute, DLI, or the spouse of someone already on a Canadian work or study permit. Candidates who qualify to apply for a work permit must also meet the following eligibility requirements. Demonstrate their intent to leave once their work authorization expires and prove they have sufficient funds to support them and their family in Canada and to return home and are not criminally or medically inadmissible to Canada and plan to work with an eligible employer and can provide any requested documents that may prove their eligibility to enter Canada. Types of Canadian work permits. There are many different options for obtaining a Canadian work permit. Some work permits require a job offer from a Canadian employer, some require that the employer provide a Labour Market Impact Assessment, LMIA, while others require that a person has some sort of connection to Canada, previous education, spousal sponsorship, etc. Please refer to the following categories below to determine the work permit which best suits your qualifications. Requiring a Labour Market Impact Assessment, LMIA. Temporary Foreign Worker Program, TFWP. Facilitated LMIA, Quebec. Global Talent Stream. LMIA exempt but requiring a job offer or employment contract. International Mobility Program, IMP. NAFTA work permits. CETA work permits. Intercompany transfers. Open work permits, no job offer or LMIA required. Post-graduation work permits, PGWP. Spousal sponsorship from inside of Canada. International Experience Canada, IEC, Working Holiday Visa. Bridging Open Work Permit, BOWP. Spouse accompanying international student or worker. Immigration tip: Canadian permanent residents do not require a work permit to work in Canada. Permanent resident status gives a person the legal right to live and work anywhere in the country. Find out more about permanent immigration options for professional and skilled workers. How to obtain a Canadian work permit. The process for obtaining a Canadian work permit varies greatly depending on which type of work permit a person is applying for. For example, an international student studying in Canada will oftentimes be automatically issued authorization to work part-time as part of their study permit authorization. Most closed work permit applications require that a foreign national has an official job offer from a Canadian employer, which is supported by a Labour Market Impact Assessment, LMIA. Even those who are LMIA exempt or exempt from requiring a work permit should be aware of the unique documentation they need to prepare in order to ensure they are granted entry to Canada. There are two general pathways for obtaining a Canadian work permit: a closed, restricted work permit and an open work permit. Closed work permits are tied to specific employers. This means that a foreign national issued a closed work permit must remain working with the same employer at the same location unless they change their work permit. If I have a Canadian job offer, am I eligible to apply for a work permit? Having a Canadian job offer does not necessarily mean you are eligible to apply for a work permit. A job offer must meet certain requirements to be considered valid for certain work permit applications. In most cases, in order to be eligible for a work permit, an applicant's job offer must be either supported by a positive Labour Market Impact Assessment, LMIA, or exempt from requiring an LMIA. It is important to note that the province of Quebec has its own process for determining the validity of an offer of employment. What am I allowed to do on a Canadian work permit? Your physical work permit outlines the specific restrictions attached to your authorization. These limitations will mainly be determined by the type of work permit you are eligible for. Conditions may include the type of work you can engage in, where and for whom you can work, and how long you can work in Canada. All work permit holders are prohibited from working at a business, whereas are grounds to suspect a risk of sexual exploitations of some workers. Work permit holders are not permanent residents of Canada, and must leave the country by the end of their authorized stay. However, if you are working in Canada, and would like to remain permanently, complete our free assessment form to receive a full evaluation of your immigration options. Can my family be included on my work permit application? If you are applying for an employer-supported work permit, you may be eligible to have your spouse and dependent children accompany you to Canada. If your children are school-aged and are in Canada, they may attend Canadian educational institutions without requiring a separate study permit. Your spouse or partner may also be eligible to apply for an open work permit, allowing them to work for any employer in Canada. How much does a Canadian work permit cost? The processing fee for a closed work permit is $155 Canadian per person, or $255 per person for an open work permit. If you are restoring a work permit or applying as a group of performing artists, additional fees will apply.